Another episode into the Java journey. So basically what we are doing here is we're going to cover polymorphism. I know previous episode I was thinking about it when we were talking about inheritance, but to be honest, there's a lot to cover, so I thought, you know what, that episode's going to be too long. Let's go ahead and get started with polymorphism separately. So polymorphism, what does it mean, right? The literal meaning is many forms, right? That's what polymorphism means. So what it does essentially is it allows us to treat objects of different classes as object of a common superclass. So making our code more flexible and extensible. Okay, so as you can see, I've opened up my IDE and now we're going to look at a little bit different classes than we were looking at before, right? So I've created three classes: animal, dog, and cat. Okay, so I want to illustrate polymorphism with a practical example, right? Imagine we're building a system to manage different types of animals, okay? So we're going to start off by creating a superclass, which I've already done, called animal, and then we're going to create subclasses of a dog and cat. So let's have a look at animal, okay? There's nothing really there. We've not initiated any variables because I just want to showcase polymorphism, right? So go ahead and write your first method, public void make sound, and what it will do, it will just print out to the console that the animal makes a sound. Okay, that's all you need to do. Let's move on to dog, and in dog what we're going to do is we're going to do public class dog and make sure that extends animal. Okay, so we inherit from the animal class that we covered last time. Create a new function called public void make sound, exactly the same name. Okay, and just system.out.println, print something out to the console. It can be whatever you want, but I've just said the dog makes a sound. You can also put the dog barks or whatever you like. And let's go ahead and do the same for a cat as well. So let's go ahead and click on that. Okay, we're going to go ahead and click on the cat, and we're going to again create a new class called cat. Make sure that extends animal. Okay, we're going to include public void make sound, and the system.out.println whatever you want the cat to say, right? Meow or whatever. And make sure that you add the override annotation to both the dog and the cat. And we're going to explain that a little bit more in detail as time goes on, right? One thing, especially now that we've mentioned override, right? All we're telling it to do is just to override the method of the superclass, right? Or the parent class. So animal has make sound as well. We just want to override that. So what we're going to go ahead and do now is we're going to go ahead and create a new class called main. Okay, so inside our main class, make sure you write your main function, public static void main, of course, as always, and then go ahead and okay, so what I've just quickly done is just refactored the name, right? So these two aren't matching, so just make it uppercase main, and then you can go ahead and write that. So now you're thinking, what now? What we're going to do, and again I'll explain that shortly, is we're going to just instantiate two new objects. So let's go with animal. Let's not go ahead with what they're saying. Let's just say my dog and is equal to new. Right, and then we're just going to use dog, right? Remember we've created a class for dog, so let's just leave it like that, and then we're going to go ahead again and create a new one. And then we're going to go ahead with my cat and then instantiate a new one called new cat as well. Okay, so now that we've got these two objects, what we're going to go ahead and do, we're going to do my dog. So let's just select that from the drop down from intelligence, and we're going to go ahead and select that make sound. That's fine, we've only got one function, and let's also do that for my cat as well, okay? Okay, what you can do now, you've written all the code along with me, let's just go ahead and pause for a second, okay? So, in the main class, inside of the main method, right, we create dog and cat objects, right, but assign them to the animal type variable, right, to the animal class, right? And this is really, really important. What we're doing here, right, this is exactly what polymorphism is in action, okay? We're treating dog and cat objects as animal objects, right, of objects of the actual superclass, right, or the parent class, if you will. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and run the code now. So let's go ahead and run our main function. And let's have a look and see what our output is. And you can see in the console, right, dog makes a sound, cat makes a sound. This is pretty awesome, right? Because when we run the code, we see these specific sounds made by the dog and the cat, even though we're using the animal animal class here, or the animal type of the variable, right? The correct make sound method is being called based on the actual object type, and this is what dynamic polymorphism is, or runtime polymorphism as we like to call it. Okay, so now that we've learnt a little bit about polymorphism so far, let's look at something a little bit different, okay? I want to make things a little bit more interesting and something that you might not have come across, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create an array of animals, okay? So let's go ahead and use our animal class here, and remember that all you want to do is add the brackets to notify that it's an array. So let's call it animals, and then say equals new, and then animal type array, okay? And then what we'll just say is just 3, the size of 3, right? So that we can just include like 3 different animals there. So what the IntelliSense is telling us, right, that at animal 0 we can create like a dog, cat, animal, whatever. So let's go ahead and accept this, but what we'll do is rather than assigning it to my dog, we'll say new dog, that would be correct. At animals 1, what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to create a new cat, correct, so we can accept that. And at animals 2, but we're not going to use the cat actually, we can accept that recommendation, but we're going to go ahead and create a new animal actually. And you think like, oh, okay, what's the point in this, like why are we doing that? But it will all make sense now, and we can showcase like how great polymorphism is and how useful it can be in terms of providing flexibility in our code, right? So let's go ahead and create a for loop now, okay? And again, I'll explain all of this in detail. So remember, we want to just create animals and animals. Excellent. And then we just want to call that animal.makeSound, okay? That's it, okay? Now, let's try and understand what we're trying to do here, okay? We're further illustrating that what polymorphism can do, right, by creating an array of animal objects. And this array holds, you know, dog, cat, animal types, right? All 3 types it can hold, right? So that's why we've instantiated all 3 at the different positions inside of that array, okay? So when we iterate through the array, right? So if you want to go through an array, a great thing that you can use is a for loop, as we've seen in the past. So exactly what we're doing. We're going to iterate through each one step by step, and then we're going to call the make sound function, and we really want to see what happens, right? Does it produce the sound that we're expecting it to produce, right? So let's go ahead and run the main function, and let's see what happens. Okay, so obviously I've run the function now, and you can see loads of stuff I've printed into the console, right? But what I want to do is just quickly comment these out where we're calling these, so it's a little bit clearer as to like what's actually printing out to the console, right? You might think, oh no, we did that before, but okay, I've commented them out, so it's not going to run. So let's see what happens when we iterate through our loop, right? The first thing is the dog makes sounds, right? Because it's the first position in our array. The second is that the cat makes a sound, and that's the second position in our array. And the last is animal makes a sound, which is the third position in our array. And actually, it's printed out exactly what we've put for all of the actual classes there. That's pretty amazing, isn't it? Right? That it's able to call the correct thing. You're going to begin to understand here, right? That by using polymorphism, right, it allows us to write more generic and flexible code. So for example, if we add a new type of animal, right, like bird, we don't need to modify the existing main method. We can simply create a bird class, extend the animal class, right, and override the make sound method. And this makes our code more maintainable and extensible. One other thing that you could also do, right, I've mentioned in the past, method overriding. So if we go back to our dog, for example, if we don't want to use the override method here, based on the you can call the same method, right, with the exact same name, but with Java, the way that you override methods is by using different parameters. So based on the type of parameters that you enter, it will call that particular function, and that's known as method overriding, right? So that's also another way to look at it, or you could just use the override function like we've done today. You know, and one more thing is that, you know, polymorphism is also really closely related to interfaces and abstract classes. Interfaces, right, define a contract that classes must adhere to, right? And abstract classes provide a base class with a common functionality. Okay, so both interfaces and abstract classes can be used to achieve polymorphism as well. So that's something really important for you to know, but let's go ahead and let's recap on what we've learned today, okay? So polymorphism, okay? Treating objects of different classes as objects of a common superclass, right? That's the first thing that we've done today. Method overriding, right? Providing specific implementation of methods in subclasses. And like I mentioned, you can use the override tag that we've used here, or you can use parameters. Either or, both will work, okay? The third thing is dynamic polymorphism, right? Or known as runtime polymorphism. The correct method is called based on the actual object's actual type, right? And the last one, the benefits of polymorphism, right? It allows our code to be flexible, maintainable, and extensible as well. So it's really, really powerful tool, right? That allows us to create more robust and flexible object-oriented programs. So keep practicing, and I'll see you in the next one, where we're going to explore abstraction and encapsulation.